What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tabletop Life. If it's your first time joining, or if you are somebody who watches all of our content and you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bells on because we got tons of different content coming. Today, we're going to be doing some list building. Yes, list building with Brad today. We've got a member of the community we're going to be going over for Eldar and going through their units and their meta and stuff like that and coming up with a list that hopefully will do them very, very well. So obviously Eldar is kind of my specialty and stuff. So without further ado, let's get building that list. All right, so I'm here with Nathan. Nathan, how are you on this fine evening for you since you're all the way across the pond from me?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So just been getting into playing Eldar, so I'm having fun. It's a little bit different than what I'm used to. So it's just having lots of fun.
All right, so we've got Eldar and everything like that. So what do you usually play?
Death Guard or some variation of Chaos. So the last two events that I've been to, one was Chaos Demons, and then the last one was Death Guard.
Okay. So what would you say your typical play style is? How do you usually play, and are you trying to carry that play style over into Eldar, or are you trying to have a different play style in Eldar?
Well, I think my last two lists were fairly aggressive. I mean, one of them was Triple Keeper and Bloodletters, so that pretty much spells out how that one plays. You can only do so much with basically entire faction that's melee only. And then Death Guard, I would say I'm aggressive, but I'm like aggressive 5 inches at a time.
as aggressive as you can be with Death Guard, right?
Yeah, it's a slow aggression, I'll admit, but I don't think they've got a whole much else.
Okay, so typically you like to play aggressive though, so that's really good to know. And then what is your meta like, and what terrain do you guys typically play on there as well? Because obviously that puts a lot into kind of the lists that you want to use.
So the very last event, and I don't know if the style of event had a bearing. It was an Iron Man. So obviously the time limits are a bit more stressed. It was like 18% Death Guard, and then the next favorite was Dark Angels, and then it was just a mix from there.
Okay.
So it was
so lots of -1 damage, lots of melee. Okay. So a lot of Death Guard and Dark Angels.
Yeah, I think if a lot of the people knew what the terrain would have been like, they probably wouldn't have played it. I've heard that a lot of the better players in my area will likely be switching to Dark Eldar now that obviously they are as strong as they are. So I expect to see a lot of them coming around. And if my terrain from the last event is anything to go by, like there was just almost nothing you could shoot long range.
Okay, so there was just a lot of line of sight blocking.
It was basically 4 triangle ruins through the middle that had no visibility through them, with like an X that ran in the middle of the map, and then each corner also had an obscuring L.
Okay.
So it was heavy. Not like WTC levels of like table 1, everything's a ruin heavy, but it was up there.
Okay. So that's definitely good to know. So that has a lot of advantages for certain armies for sure. Obviously, it helps you with armies that want to do a lot of shooting. So that's a Death Guard makes a lot of sense for that. I mean, you got a lot of things to walk up and stuff like that and hide and go little by little.
If I knew the terrain was going to be so heavy, I probably would have switched my my Contemptor Dreadnoughts for something else.
Sure. All right, so Eldar, what are your favorite Eldar units that you're looking at playing as you're switching to Eldar? What do you What do you
So
gleaming towards?
I've only played a few games so far, as Eldar. So I basically what I did when I thought let's put the first list together. I went through the whole list, and I was like, oh, look at this. These, the Shadow Weavers. Oh, look, they're 3 damage, and this is 3 damage, and these seem like they'll be good units. So most of my lists have Shadow Spectres. So most of my lists have a few Shadow Spectres. Some Shining Spears. We got D cannons everywhere, of course. Gotta have some D cannons. Yeah. So, but I did find that with the lists that I was making, that they're decent at killing stuff. I mean, they're not amazing, and my list would always score pretty high on points, but I just wasn't able to score, or at least I wasn't able to stop my opponent from also scoring high. Everything is just so focused on killing, and if it doesn't do the job, then you're kind of stuffed.
Okay. How are the objectives typically placed? Are the objectives like hidden to where you can be on them and be safe, or are they in the open to where like you're super exposed?
At the last event, the majority of them were fairly hidden from memory. It was pretty rare to have one out in the open unless it was, I think it's Surround and Destroy that has the 2 in the middle.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so D cannons, spears, shadow specters. Now, do you want to stay full craft world? Do you want to mix in Harlequins, Dark Elf? What are you thinking? What is your preference?
I actually found myself Dark Eldar probably not. And not that I don't like Dark Eldar, I just think that at this point you lose too much from souping Dark Eldar. So I just don't like, if you're going to take Dark Eldar, to me it's like you may as well just be Dark Eldar.
I agree.
But I did just find some Harlequins secondhand. I basically picked up 3 boats, a couple Shadow Seers, and, troop, and just basically the main sort of units that you'd expect in a small Harlequins force. So yeah, definitely we'll be playing with some of their shenanigans for a little bit.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get into kind of building this. All right, so you're thinking you definitely want Harlequins, right? So when you look at Harlequins and you want to save as much CP as possible, you're saying 3 boats and everything, so you're probably not going to have more than 3 troops in there. Is that correct? So if you do 3 troops and boats, that means you want to go fusion. So
yes,
you want 3 fusion boats. Typically what I like to do, and with close combat weapons, is I'll go caresses. A lot of people go back and forth on what melee weapons to choose and why you choose them and stuff. And so my thought process around why you choose certain melee weapons for Harlequins is simply the strength. So you can only rely on your Troop Master being around for so long when you're punching stuff in combat. So they're more reliable if you are wounding on 3s or sometimes 4s if it's against something tougher, especially with like all the T5 Space Marines and like Death Guard. Everything is T5, right? And it's like, well, if you're wounding on 5s, it's just not as reliable if you don't have rerolls. So I look at the strength is typically better than the AP or the other damage. D3 damage is way too random to rely on it. And then -2 AP versus -3 AP with the Embrace. -2 AP usually pushes enough things to their invuln that you don't ever need that -3 AP. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like having a whole bunch of -1 AP melee weapons just is a recipe for feeling sad against a lot of opponents.
Yes. -1 AP is just basically like you are not going to do anything. Especially if you go against like sisters, it's even more likely that they're not going to do anything. Yeah, they can ignore 2 as well, but yeah, -1 AP usually does not do enough. Especially with certain terrain and stuff like that, right? Like if you get cover when you get charged and stuff like that, depending on what the terrain rules are, they might be having 3-up saves then. in combat, and then you're just like, okay,
Yep.
I'm just bouncing off of you. So usually what I'll do is I'll start off with 2 caresses per squad. If you ever end up having enough points or something like that, I think going to 3 per squad could be super good. But having 2 usually gets you where you need to be. If you're going to go into combat and you're going to go up against anything, having 8 strong attacks and 12 wimpy attacks, I guess you can say,
Yep.
is usually enough to clean something up off of an objective and do what you need to do. So obviously you're not going to take them, and you're not going to go into like 3 Death Shroud Terminators or something like that, because most likely you're not going to kill them, and then you're going to die unless you spend a lot of CP and run away. So
Yeah, and I think that, like, well, from all the beatdowns I've taken from Harlequins, since the Psychic Awakening came out, it's never about like the fact that they can just go and absolutely kill something. It's that they'll kill a few models, they're obsec, they've stolen the point, and and then you score no primary for a while, rather than like they're sending this big attack brick after you that just wipes you out completely.
Yep, that's exactly true. So Troop Master usually I'll try to give him a fusion pistol, and then if you need the points you could take it off, but it's just like the most reliable fusion pistol you can have because you're hitting on 2s. And then we'll throw a Shadow Seer in here to start off with, and it really depends on what the rest of the list ends up being like. If you actually need him, he's really good for the mortal wounds and double move and stuff like that, but it really depends on, like, because you're doing boats, I don't know that you really need the double move. It could come in handy late game, but it's not something that's going to help you early game. The minus 6 inches could help you, but with 3 boats, typically you're going to be able to hide them very well. And by you saying the boards, you really don't need the 6 inches. So it might be better to take the 115 points and put it somewhere else in the list. So that's something to keep in mind, that might be really good to shift around. And then we've got some transports. So you got 3 transports in here. Boom. Boom. And all right, so you've got your basic Harlequins, you got 3 fusion boats, you got Troop Master, you got Shadow Seer. The Troop Master typically, so because you're doing the fusion boats, and Craftworlds really doesn't have very good warlord traits or relics. Like, let's just be real with ourselves. Like, they just don't have what it is. So like making a Harlequin guy your warlord with relics is not a bad thing. So typically you're going to want to make the Troop Master your warlord, and there's 2 kind of things here. So if you're doing Soaring Spite, the warlord trait for Soaring Spite is really good. But because you're not doing a bunch of foot troops that like he has to back up on turn 1 or anything like that, he can just chill in the boat. You really don't need to like jump him out there, spend the CP, jump back in the boat. I don't think you really need to do that. So I would highly recommend the CP regen, because it is the nastiest warlord trait in the game right now as far as like keeping your army viable throughout the whole game. When I use it, I usually gain in between 6 and 8 CP off of it a game. Like, it's just it's just bonkers. Like, and it can swing stuff, right? It's just like you spend 4 CP and then you get like 2 back out of that 4, and you're just like, oh man, now I can do some crazy shenanigans because I have way more CP than I thought I was gonna have.
But yeah, that was I suppose not a concern, but something I was wondering with the Harlequin side, because it seems like anytime you want to pull a trick, you need minimum 3 to 4 CP to like put a few of the combos together.
Yep.
So I was feeling a bit light there.
Yeah.
With patrol and another detachment.
Yeah. So yeah, usually, so it's like, yeah, if you end up starting with 6 to 8 CP, you're going to end up. Yeah, so I think with 5-man squads, you're never really going to need to do your double damage. I wouldn't even put that on the table with a 5-man squad, or like the +1 to damage. It's not really worth it unless you have a 10-man. Hitting and bouncing out of combat with small squads, unless it's a super dire circumstance, you could just try to avoid it. You might use an auto advance 6 inches or something, maybe. So I think with 3 fusion boats, you don't really worry too much about Harlequin combos unless it's like charging with a vehicle and running away to get movement, or if you absolutely need to fight twice. And it's actually kind of better to do the +1 damage to the Troop Master rather than like one of those 5-man squads, because
Yep.
then you get the flat 3 damage. If you do want to fight twice, you can kind of use it all on the Troop Master. But yes, you burn CP most of the time. I would say expect if you are going to use CP on Harlequins, you're going to spend in between 4 and 6 in a single turn, to do like a combo that hits really hard and keeps you alive. And then the standard kind of relic that you'll put on the True Master is going to be the Fang. It's just too good to not ever have it. You get that strength 5 again. You get extra attacks. It's flat 2 damage, which it kind of sucks whenever you go up against like Death Guard. You need to like kind of realize like my True Master is not going to do even close to as much as I'm used to the True Master doing. So that's just something to like keep in the back of your head. You can play the True Master very aggressive, kill a lot of stuff, but against that -1 damage, it's just like, oh man, I gotta change my thinking a little bit. So yes, that is your standard Harlequin. So then you look at adding in Craftworld. So look at that, nice round number. Nope, it is not adding the points correctly. Sick. All right. Yeah, welcome to glitches in the Warhammer app. All right, so you like D cannons and stuff like that. I know we chatted a little bit about the support platforms and stuff. So in order to get that stuff in the list and enough of things, there's 2 ways. You either do a battalion or you do like a patrol and a spearhead, or you do a spearhead and an outrider. It really depends what you want to do and how much CP you want to spend. So you start off with 12 CP. Putting in 2 more detachments and going down to 6, I don't think is that big of a deal when you have the Warlord trait to regen CP.
Yep.
So if you wanted to do a style like that, you definitely can. So I would say let's start off with your D cannons. Let's start off with the out of line of sight shooting and go from there. So with this is the freaking sweetest special ever, and we'll talk about it as I add it in here. So support platforms are amazing now with the while we stand we fight changes, because you've got these 3 platforms that deploy together, and you have 6 inches of deployment, like 6 inches between them when you deploy. So you actually can spread them out pretty far when you deploy them, which is really cool. And then they all become individual units. So they're going to take great advantage of the Mastercrafted, and they're going to be able to re-roll a hit, re-roll a wound. You can give them cover, which is really good for shooting. Even though they're out of line of sight, it does come in handy a lot of times, like if people have flyers or stuff like that, or if they come in from strategic reserve or deep strike something on you. And then the other really, really cool thing, which I don't think a lot of people know, is they actually have the Guardian keyword. So you can use the stratagem to give them a 4-up invuln. So if a support platform gets targeted, you can then, and it's against something that is like super strong and you want to try to keep that alive, you can say, hey, here's 1 CP. I got a 4-up invuln. And yeah, like depending on the damage stuff, you might still die, but like having that chance at least to save it with a 4-up invuln is better than having no save at all. So makes them super viable. All the out of line of sight shooting, the Shadow Weavers with 48-inch range, really, really good at picking stuff off of like backfield objectives. And because you said it's really hard to get line of sight on the terrain that is in your area, so out of line of sight is way even stronger for you, right? So it's like, oh, hey, you're sitting on this objective, you just pump in 3d6 shots on them, and if it's like a small squishy unit, you're probably going to kill a lot of them, or you're going to pick them up after a couple turns of the shooting. So those are really good for that. And then you got the D cannons, which is like, okay, yes, they only have 24-inch range, but if you sit in a ruin and you can't be shot, or you sit right behind a ruin, depending if there's windows or not, and you just threaten the entire middle of the board, like, that's fine. Because in most of the missions, there is 1 to 3 objectives in range of that 24-inch area. And anything that comes onto those objectives, then you literally can just go, hey, you're dead because I'm putting all of these D cannon shots into you. So it's a huge threat. And the really cool thing is if you are playing against like a melee army that's moving fast, you can just back up then again to your board edge, and you're still able to just shoot them. And it's like they're coming towards you, you're running away, they're coming towards you. You're not taking any penalties for moving and shooting. So you've got the movement to do all that stuff. And then another really cool thing, if you want to be aggressive with like the platforms of the Shadow Weavers, you can actually just throw those at your enemies, and you can just be aggressive and move those up the table, because you really don't care if you don't care if the Shadow Weavers die. So it's like
Yep.
if you need to put those up onto a forward objective to be like your mid board control, and then people are like, why is this platform there? Well, they're a lot more durable than you'd think. Being like T5, like they have to put something big into them usually to guarantee them killing. If they're just going to put a bunch of bolter fire in them or something, they're not going to die. Like they're just not going to. So it's like, okay, go ahead, shoot all your chaff at that, because I'd rather you shoot my bolters at that than my Harlequins. Like, because bolters and flamers is what's going to kill Harlequins, because it's number of shots, and then you're just taking small saves. But wounding on 5s, way less reliable for them. So you look at your support platforms, and then you look at a Farseer on a bike. Typically, you're going to want a Farseer on a bike. The mortal wounds output is just really good with Doom and Executioner. That's really what you're going to put on the Farseer all the time. I wouldn't even really look at anything else. It gives you Executioner and Smite for your mortal wound output. You've got this bike that can move 22 inches and just like pick stuff off if it needs to. It can get anywhere you need it to get for engage, to jump on objectives. Don't be afraid to lose the character in turn 3, 4, or 5. Just get as much output as you can. And then Doom is really good. I don't find myself using Doom too much unless there's like a high priority target I really need to kill. A perfect example would be like a Necron Silent King. It's like if I can Doom that guy and then shoot all my D cannons at it, I'm probably picking it up that turn. And then obviously if you want to throw Warlocks in here as well, you can Jinx that guy too, and it's like, hey, you're definitely dead, because Jinx and Doom together with the D cannons, you push 4 up in bones to 5s, 5 up in bones to 6s. It just makes their reliability of staying alive way less.
How do you feel like Warlock Skyrunner versus Warlock Conclave for the 36-inch casting?
So it's interesting. Taking them on bikes, I think it's a little bit too much points.
Sorry. I mean just a Warlock Sky, like a standard Warlock Skyrunner compared to a Warlock
Okay. So comparing them. Okay. Yes. So Skyrunner is good because it can keep up with the Farseer. So you're able to buff them with a stratagem to give them +1 to cast, and the range is typically there still. Sometimes you have to put them in a bad spot if you do want to get Jinx off. So it's nice to not have to do that, because the range is 18 inches and Doom is 24. That 6-inch difference to get close to something might make a big difference. But I think I look at it as a CP spend as well, where it's like, if I'm going to buff them to be +1 to cast, then I'm going to have to spend another CP to extend the range. I kind of don't want to really extend the range at that point. And you have to be super passive with those 2 Warlocks, and they can get picked off because they're not characters. With like your Harlequin boats, right, you can use your 3 boats and you can follow it up with a Farseer and a Warlock on a bike, and they're going to be safe. Like nothing's going to kill them. You got 3 boats there, you got 15 guys that are going to come out of those boats, and then you have your characters on bikes that can do whatever they want the next turn. So like you're going to be safe. Nobody's going to really get to those characters in that first turn or two. So I would go with a bike over a Conclave on foot. I actually find it to where every time I've tried to take the Conclave on foot, I almost never use the stratagem to extend the range. I think that you're so close with the board sizes and stuff and the way deployment are and the way people play and are deployed, you typically don't need to extend the range. And because your shooting is not like 48 inches, right? If you're taking a bunch of Dark Reapers or stuff like that where your shooting is way further, or Lynxes, extending that range can be super valuable. But because your D cannons are 24 inches, you don't need to overextend your reach really beyond that, right? So it's like if a D cannon is 24 inches and they move 6, you have a 30-inch threat range, right? So 18 of that then is going to be your casting ability. So you're only going to be a little bit further out than your D cannons. You don't need that. You don't need that full 36 inches. So I think you can go with a bike. So if you wanted to do a warlock on a bike, and you give him Jinx typically, so that he's able to do that. One thing that I do always do with the warlocks too is I never leave smite on them, because doing 1 mortal wound, I find I typically am not going to do it, and I'm going to use protect or jinx more often, because even doing protect or something on the Farseer and then putting him in a dangerous situation is really good. So typically I will replace their smite, and usually what I will do is I will replace it with focus will. And the reason for that is having the ability to buff your Farseer for +2 to cast to guarantee like your smite and your executioner, and then if you give the +1 to cast, now your Farseer is a +3 to cast. Like most of the time you're going to get a super smite on it. So it's really, really good for that. Just like pure, hey, these 2 bikes fly up to you, you're taking D6 mortal wounds, plus you're going to take executioner. I'm going to kill a model with that executioner, and then I'm going to do another D3 mortal wounds. So it's like it starts to make that really viable. I like it even more with Eldrad. You pair a warlock with focus will with Eldrad, it's like +4 to cast after your first power. It's like, dude, it's a super smite every time, because you got your ghost, because you got free reroll of 1 or both of the dice, right? So it's like you roll 2 dice. If you get a 9 or something like that, or a 10, it's like, okay, I'm just going to reroll 1 of those dice, whichever one's the lowest, and I'm going to try to get a super smite every time. Well, yeah, you don't even need a 9 or 10 because it's +4. Like you need a 7 on the dice. It's not that difficult to hit. Okay, so you got that stuff. So what do you? So I feel like there's one more thing. There's one more thing that you definitely have to add in here.
I think I know where you're going with this, and I think this is where I'm going next as well.
Mr. Warp Spiders.
The 2 units of Warp Spiders.
You pretty much have to. So it with my local team and everything like that, I argue it's so weird that it doesn't auto include Exarch. I was like, man, okay, 1 squad of Warp Spiders I know I have to take, because being able to have, you can't put the Exarch powers in here, but you take the Web of Deceit Exarch power in them so that you can just teleport at any time. What it does is it forces your opponent to have to block their whole deployment zone on turn 1, and if they don't, you literally are getting deploy scramblers in their deployment zone turn 1 for free, and then they have to deal with the Warp Spiders, so they're running something backwards, and then their 46 movement is just so good. Like you average in between like 17 and 25 inches of movement. So it's like if you roll really high on movement, and then you can just go jump on middle objectives, and whether it's plant a banner on them, force the opponent now to come onto those objectives. There's so many options. And so I always go, I'm like, man, I really want more mortal wounds. And every time I arrange lists, I end up going back and taking out one of my psychers to put in another squad of Warp Spiders, because 2 of them and how fast they can get around the board and jump on objectives, like they're just too good. And their weapons are nothing to laugh at. I mean, it's 12 shots, and their strength 6, and then on 6s to wound, they're -4 AP. So it's like you get a couple of those 6s to wound, like you're gonna kill some stuff.
Yeah, I tried out some swooping.
Swooping hawks.
Swooping hawks to like as a replacement for Warp Spiders. I think I had to find 10 points in the list somewhere, and I was like, oh man, these guns just like, and there's no rend on these. I get to drop once and that's it.
Yeah, like just a bunch of strength 3 shooting does not go very far. Not at all. Yeah, the las blasters are underwhelming, and then the grenade packs. Yeah, like the only way that really works is if you have a bunch of them coming in, so you can do multiple grenade packs and stuff like that. Yeah, they need a little bit of love. Warp Spiders are the Warp Spiders are the truth though. They're really good, and every time I play people in our practice games, they're like, man, those warp spiders are so annoying. Because if there's one piece of terrain like in a corner of the board in their deployment or something that they can hide behind that isn't a ruin, like a crate or anything where they have to like run around it or over it, they can't shoot you. It's like, do I really want to take my time to go and kill this thing that's in the corner of my deployment zone? Like, no, I really don't. But if you don't, then you're just going to sit there and get engaged. You have options of doing line breaker. You've got all these things, and it's just like they're just secondary beasts. You just use them to get as many secondaries as you can, and they're so good for it.
I love the idea of someone plopping, a unit down on an objective that isn't OBSEC, and they just tow onto it with 1 or 2 models, and you roll the 4 dice, and you're like, all right, that's a 25-inch move. I'm just going to put all of my models on the objective, and like there goes your primary.
Exactly. It is very, very, very fun to see those, and a lot of people underestimate it. And then you're like, okay, I'm moving 46 plus 7 inches, and they're like, wait, what? You're doing what? And also they get even better. They can be -1 to hit. They get targeted. You roll 2d6, they're -1 to hit, and with the Craftworld traits being in cover over 12 inches away, you're always almost going to be over 12 inches away with them. Like, you're not going to be in people's faces. So they now have a 2-up save. So they're -1 to hit with a 2-up save. Like, they're very resilient. Even though they're T3, like, they stay alive. And if you really want to, you've got that backhand warlock in there. You can protect them as well, right? Now they have a 1-up save.
I really just like as well. I just when I first read it, I was like, surely this 4d6 is like a once per game ability or something. It was like, nope. Every turn you can just be like, all right, I'm just going to go to the other side now.
Yeah. So what that used to be in other editions is it used to be called a flicker jump, and what it would be is every time they were targeted, somebody would target them to shoot. They can roll dice, and then they can move as if it was their movement phase. So they would get targeted, they would just move away behind cover, and then if you kept targeting them, they could just keep moving. So like it used to be way worse to where like you couldn't shoot them because they would just jump away, and then like, oh, you targeted them? Well, guess what? What you targeted them with, you just wasted all those shots because now I'm behind a wall and you can't see them. So it used to be really, really, really crazy.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's solid. We're sitting in a pretty solid spot. The total is not even there for whatever reason. So I need to actually add. I guess I need a calculator. Come on. All right, so you've got 300 points basically left.
All right. So
that's hard to get another detachment out of.
Yeah, no, I don't think the other detachment is there. What I was thinking was, everyone likes punchy robots, so maybe we can put a punchy robot in.
A punchy robot.
One that does mind bullets.
Boom, Wraithseer, mind bullets. Wraithseers are really cool. And it kind of follows up. So you got to go with the D cannon, more out of line of sight shooting, more high AP. The really cool thing too about these guys is they get smite now. They used to not have access to smite, so it just makes them really, really good. And then you have a couple options here, right? You can do another guy with Protect and Jinx on him. You can do Quicken and Restrain. I think so. Quicken and Restrain is a really, really good power. Quicken is cool because now imagine this with imagine quickening your warp spiders and doing that movement a second time. Think about that. They go wherever they want. So like even if the board is blocked and you want to try to get deploy scramblers turn 1, you can literally 46 plus 7 inches move your warp spiders, move your Wraithseer up, just make sure 1 warp spider is within that 18-inch range, quicken them, and now do the 4d6 plus 7-inch movement again. Like, that's just insane. But Restrain is where it's at, in my opinion. Being able to have the movement of an enemy threat is just so good. Like, like if there's like a Mortarion, or if there's something that's going to come moving really fast that you like, Space Wolves, anything that can move and like advance and charge, and you're just like, hey, I'm going to slow you down, have fun, and you just keep slowing stuff all the time. I play against Ultramarines a lot, and I constantly do that to Gilliman. And I'm just like, hey, Gilliman is going to basically just move like a turtle all game and mess up you moving up the board, mess up all of your ores and stuff like that. So I'm just going to slow him down as much as I can. So yeah, really, really good. They're kind of like a distraction unit too, right? You step out with those and everyone is just goes like, oh, I gotta kill this thing. Oh, it's a big thing in my face. I gotta kill it. And then it's like, okay, go ahead, shoot everything at that. Because then you're not shooting my Harlequins or my Harlequin vehicles, right? And it's like, okay, you want all of the heavy stuff, like you want the multi-meltas and stuff to go into your Harlequin troops with the 4-up invones. You're like, yes, shoot that stuff at my Harlequin troops. And then you want to be like, aha, you have bolters left. Shoot all your bolters at my stuff that doesn't care. So yes, they're very resilient. They're T8. Their combat, they only have 4 attacks, but like D3 plus 3 damage is just a lot of damage. So now you have this super big threat that you can stand in the middle of the board and kind of back up your characters, back up your Harlequins and stuff like that too. Yeah, and they're good.
I was super shocked when I saw that like an Eldar construct of all things had toughness 8.
And they ignore AP1.
Yeah, that was all fantastic things when I saw it. I was like, oh, big Eldar robot, it must be like toughness 6 or something. It's like, oh, it's a knight. Here we go.
Yeah, they're really good. Really good. The toughness, and then they got the -1, the ignores -1 AP now too. I'm like, oh man, I hope all Wraiths get that update because it's just so good. So yeah, they're very good. So then when you look to round out this list, you got like 150 points. And remember, if we need to, we can remove that Shadow Seer if we think that there's something that is better. So you have in between that 115 to 230 points to still play with. So when you look at this list, I think the biggest thing that is kind of missing is a little bit more units to trade with. You've only got 3 OBSEC troops right now. They're going to be out there in the fray because you want to get the fusion in range in the first turn. They're going to live for 2 to 3 turns. That's typically what's going to take depending on the armies that you're playing. They got to kill all the boats. Then they got to go through 4-up invones. So what you really don't need anything on back objectives. You've got your support platforms for that. Your backfield is you could block your whole backfield with your support platforms. Like you don't have to worry about that. You've got some mid-board coverage between the Wraithseer and your mortal wounds with your characters, and the Wraithseer kind of protecting those characters. And then you've got this really good mortal wound bubble for sure. So I think a little bit more support for that mid to forward for your turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 is going to be what's important. You could. It's really hard because the troops in Craft Worlds just aren't that good. So it's like you could take Dire Avengers, but like they're just not that good. They're not. It's like are they better than Harlequins? No, not really. But if you give them the invones, they at least have 5-up invones. You could just take the 4-up invone on the Exarch, so you have 2 wounds that you can just tank with 4-up invones. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, so like you could do that, and you could just run and advance them and like use them to trade. For 65 points. Actually, I think they're 55 now. Yeah, they're 55,
55
now.
So
that's not bad. Like if you wanted to take 2 to 3 squads of Dire Avengers, it's not the worst. You could also go Rangers. Rangers are very good. They allow you to natively deep strike them. I'll almost never start them on the table. And then depending on where the board is, turn 2 and turn 3, boom, boom, they could just come in that those mid objectives, and then that allows you to move off of those objectives with other things.
Yep.
So it really just depends. I always struggle with the last couple hundred points in lists because it's like there's so many different ways you can go to round off lists, and it really is depending on like what you feel like you're missing. Rangers also become more annoying, and it does guarantee you deploy scramblers easier and stuff like that. It does help you with engage. So when I typically will build a list, I will focus on the secondaries. Secondaries will win you games a lot of times. So if you can go into this and you can say, all right, I have while we stand, we fight. If I can protect these platforms in a way to where I guarantee myself 15 points on that, you know you're going to get 10 on deploy scramblers between warp spiders and either the Harlequin troops, or if you want to throw one thing of rangers in there, they physically cannot stop you because you know your warp spiders can move into their deployment in so many ways. You know you can move to the mid board turn 1 with them to get it, and you know that you can just deep strike anywhere on the board. So like there's another 10 points guaranteed. Now you're up to 25 points on the secondaries. Then you look at what your third one is. Typically with an army like this, engage is going to be very, very good. So building around that and guaranteeing as many points around engage as you can is going to be really good. So like on turn 1, you've got your boats, you've got your characters on bikes. Okay, you can get 2 to 3 points on engage in the first turn. You also have your warp spiders, right? So between that stuff, you're basically going to get 2 points on engage every single turn very easily because your platforms are going to be in the back 2 quarters, and then you just need one thing in another quarter to get 2 points every single turn. So now you're saying, okay, you know you're going to get 10 points on engage without really trying. So then to get the other 5 points on engage, you have to have a little bit more throwaway units in those table quarters. Most of the time, you're going to end up in between 12 and 15 points on engage, though. So now you're basically maxing out your secondaries. So the list as a base is going to do that already. So now you need to look at how do you get primary and deny primary, and that's gonna go back to throwaway units. You want fast units that you can throw away that are obsec that can kill stuff off of objectives. So that's I think that would be my recommendation is more obsec troops. Well, be one of two things: more obsec troops or more mortal wounds. I'll never say no to more mortal wounds.
Do you think the Guardian bomb has a little bit of play there?
Yes, that is actually a very good point. So I think yes. The pain point is going to be that we don't have anything in the list to give them fortune. That is where that suffers a little bit. It makes them a little less resilient. And
is that where you then maybe we go the Shadow Master is not necessary? Sorry, the Shadow Seer is not necessary, but maybe another Farseer is.
Yes, so you could do that. So let's look what that looks like. So you've got your Guardians. Let's just say that they're going to be up to 20 right now. So when you look at the Guardians, the really cool thing about them is going to be you can give them the 4-up and bone with the stratagem. So then you want to protect them. So you have to make sure that something in your list has protect. The most reliable way to get protect off is going to be on a warlock, so you can buff up the warlock and the Farseer. So the problem with this configuration will be is we can't slot in another HQ, another Farseer. So then you start to force yourself into having to go a battalion route.
It's only 2 HQs.
But it's the same amount of CP, so there's nothing wrong there. All that means is then you have to take a little bit more troop tax.
And drop the Wraithseer, I guess, which will make the points up.
Yeah. So it really depends on what you want to play around. So I think you do have enough D cannons. The Wraithseer, you could get rid of it, and when you do put, I'm not going to worry about changing this to a battalion for anybody watching. I'm just going to add it here. So if you took another Farseer, man, you know what's interesting? I wonder if you just spend the CP. I think there's actually a better. I think you just take Eldrad, man.
In an auxiliary support?
No, because then you have to make him your war. Yeah, you could just do that.
Like the only thing he'd miss out on is battle whatevers, which he doesn't care about. I don't think, and matter. his 6-up feel no pain.
Which who cares? It doesn't matter. Let's be real. So yeah, I mean, I think I think the CP trade-off for what you actually get out of it, um, it's, oh, it's only 2 CP now? I thought it was 3. Oh, that's a win. So the reason that Eldrad is just so good is like, so you won't be able to use the focus will on him, um,
Yep.
but that's okay. He still gets +1 to cast. Um, it's not 100% ideal, but being able to put fortune on him, and honestly, even having, so then when you look at his powers, typically, what I would do is I would double up on Executioner with him, because your Farseer could use Doom and Smite, and then you could use Executioner on him, and then I would give him Fortune, and then I would give him Will. So now your Guardians are going to auto pass their morale, no matter how many die. So it is a really good support character that has a lot of mortal wound output. Um, it's not the worst, and if we really wanted to, if we have enough, um, oh well, here's the better way. Here's actually a little bit better way to do it. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So the
I think I
guard,
know where you're going.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
Guardians are gonna go. We're gonna make him a patrol. The Guardians we don't really care about the cover and stuff on Guardians, because they're gonna be buffed up with other stuff. So like them having the cover, them having a single reroll, like literally doesn't matter at all. So when you put Eldrad into here and you put 20 Guardians in, then what you're gonna do is we're gonna move the Warlock over to this side, because I think the Warlock with Eldrad is more important than with the Farseer on a bike. And the reason I think that he's more important is you're going to benefit more from Eldrad having +4 to cast. Um, so like if you don't care about Jinx with the Warlock on turn 1, then you buff up Eldrad. You guarantee that your Guardians are going to be more protected and stuff like that. Um,
Yep.
so I think that is typically how I would look at that and see where we're at with points really quick, because I would love to leave the Wraithseer in here, because I think having the extra psychic power to buff stuff up is, we're like way over. Am I drunk? 885 plus 631 plus 380. Okay, so we still got 100 points. Look at that. So yeah, that's good. So you've still got, so it's interesting. If you really want to, you can throw another Warlock on a bike in here. And then you
Hmm.
can get like another basic troop as well. So it really depends on how much you want to go in on psychic powers and psychic supports. Having the bikes running around is really good for secondaries and stuff like that. Um, Another option is, instead of a Warlock, is you take a Spirit Seer. And the reason Spirit Seers are really good is they're more wounds and they have the D3 damage smite. So now you've got a character that you have another smite, so you add another smite into your arsenal, and you add in another protect or jinx into your arsenal as well. So now you can do quicken, restrain, protect, jinx. You can do 3 of those powers in a single turn. You can So you can protect your guardians, you can jinx something, you can doom something, you can either quicken or you can restrain something, and then you can put fortune on your guardians. So now your guardians are going to have a 3-up invuln if they get shot. They're going to have a 5-up feel no pain. And then you're taking
I
full
feel
advantage of
like
your D cannons too.
something's wrong here because I'm building the list as we go in Battle Scribe as well.
Are the points all jacked? Are they not adding correctly?
I'm at I'm at 2066 with Eldrad, Warlocks, and the Guardians in another squad, and no Shadow Seer.
So you're telling me that these points are lying to me?
Okay, if you go back to your main screen.
Yeah, I'm adding it up individually. Let's see what we got. Oh, I don't have the Wraithseer in here. That is what I'm missing. I don't have the Wraithseer in here. I took him out.
Yeah. Took him out.
Yep, I took him out. So you would definitely. So you can add the Wraithseer in and just lose a couple Guardians. That's a lot of Guardians to lose. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think it goes down to a 12 man at that point.
Yeah, which then they're not worth it. So I think you definitely need. Well, you really don't. It really depends. You can definitely play without restrain, without quicken. Like you don't have to have those powers. It's like a nice to have. If you're going the Guardian blob, protect is really important, and it really comes down to how much do you want to use Jinx or not. And that's more of a personal preference. I have found that Jinx typically does not come in handy a lot of times.
Yep.
But then there's games where pushing those Death Shrouds to a 5-up invo instead of a 4, it could make a difference. Pushing big things to a 5-up or a 6-up could make a big difference. So I would say you either do a Spirit Seer on foot, and that's going to give you another smite, and then that's going to give you your Jinx or your Protect. And then that still leaves you with a little bit more points. So if we add a Spirit Seer in here, we're looking at, where are you, Spirit Seer? There's 60 now. So you have a weird number of 40 points, which is just a weird number. I wonder if we can squeeze 56 points out of this. Just so then you have like another thing of OBSEC. Or what you could do is you could give your Harlequins more close combat weapons, but usually with them dying. So let's see here. So I've got 34 points. Yeah, not really going to be able to squeeze that. So you really could either just upgrade your Harlequins. You could put 2 of these squads, I don't know if you're going to have enough troops, to 6-mans. Because the boats do hold 6 guys, and you can then put the Troop Master in one, and you can just put these up to 6. I think that puts you like 2 points over or something. I don't know. That's good. Yeah, it's only 28 points. So you could do that.
What was that instead of?
You just have extra points, so it's adding in. You add in the Spirit Seer,
Okay.
and then you've got some extra points now that you just kind of have to fill, but not enough to get a squad. So you can do
extra points. Oh, did you get rid of the Wraithseer?
Yeah. Because I don't think you're going to be able to cut enough points anywhere else to keep the Wraithseer.
Yep.
Because cutting 66 points is gonna be super hard without losing something big.
Yeah. Okay. So that leaves you with 104. So, like you're saying, bump up 2 of the troops. I can do that. That's fine.
And then adding in a Spirit Seer, because then you still have your other psychic power, and you have an additional mortal wound output.
And put him in the spearhead.
I think that gets you pretty close. You'll probably just have a few.
Their Spirit Mark ability is just I can't imagine why they would think that was good.
Where
So you
like
basically,
where he has to be next to the enemy for you to get the rerolls.
like,
Yeah, I don't know.
just gonna yeet him into your opponent, and then you can get some rerolls.
Yeah. So that puts you at 1994 points, and then with the additional 5 points, you can literally just give your Farseer a spear,
This thing in spear.
and that rounds you at 1999.
So what would you give the So the Warlock has Protect Jinx, and then the Spirit Sea would have what? Quicken Restrain or Protect
I
Jinx again?
think you do Protect Jinx as well. I think you put it on both of them
Yep.
because restrain and stuff, like it's good, but it's like a nice to have. You don't need it all the time. What you're gonna find yourself doing is you're gonna be like, okay, you protect the Guardian squad, you jinx something else, you kill whatever you jinx, and then you're gonna be like, do I really need to jinx something next turn? If I do, I'm probably gonna do it with my Warlock because my Guardians probably don't need to be protected again, or you might not even need to protect your Guardians in the first turn because your Harlequins are out there, and then you might be able to be like, hey, Guardians are my turn 3 thing in the middle of the board. They're super buffed up, and then you've got all this mortal wound output behind them. Because, right, you've got mortal wounds from your Spirit Seer, you've got Eldrad Smite, you've got Farseer Smite, you've got Executioner. You know you can get that Eldrad Smite to a Super Smite, almost guaranteed if you have to. So I mean, yeah, it's really good. Your Guardians are going to auto pass morale. They're going to have a 3-up invo and 5-up feel no pain. It's a lot to chew through that. I had to give you kind of a sense of what those Guardians can take. A 10-man intercessor with assault bolters, double tapping into them with full rerolls as ultramarines and charging them. I still had 5 Guardians left.
Yep.
So like 60 shots plus them in combat, and then you auto pass morale, and then you just like go steal an objective or something. It's just great. I love it. So they're super resilient. They're really hard. 3-up invones are no joke. And if you beast mode your 3-up invones, like you might not lose anybody. Like let's be real.
Yeah, and we've all been through 8th edition Storm Shield.
Yep.
You know, to know sometimes all the 3-ups just happen.
They do. Yep. And then it's like, oh, you killed one guy. Oh, I'm so sorry. And now I have 20 guys stealing an objective from you.
The Troop Master, do you reckon it's worth giving him Darkness Bite?
Usually I say yes. So in most situations, it makes him a lot more viable to just go and like kill a character on his own. Because there's so many invones in the game and stuff like that, if somebody's taking a 4-up invone or 5-up invone, even though it's 2 damage and he has all his rerolls, there's a potential they just save a lot of stuff, and being able to confirm that character dying if it has 1 or 2 wounds left, I think is really important. And even against stuff that isn't characters that has invones, like if you go into any type of Terminator or something, it's like, I know I'm killing I'm going to clean up a Terminator, right? Or I'm going to clean up a Marine or whatever it is. I think it's worth the CP. I don't think you get too much extra by just having 1 extra CP most of the time.
Yep.
Especially because you're going to be gaining CP back and stuff like that. Another just kind of really cool strategy to keep in mind with these support platforms is when you redeploy, they are individual units already, so you can only redeploy like them individually. But what you can do is you can like deploy all your support platforms on one side of the table, and then redeploy 1 from each unit then to the other side of the table. So now your opponent literally has to go to both sides of the table in order to kill your Wow We Stand We fights. So that's a quick little thing to like start off with them completely on opposite sides of the table. So it's something that's really cool. And with the Harlequin boats, because you have 3 of them, you can look to do something similar, like be super passive and deploy as if you're going second. And if you go first, because then what you do is you bait them into deploying stupid, right? You say, they're like, oh, those aren't a threat. They're all the way back there. They can't reach me. I can now deploy all the way up in my deployment zone. And then you go, oh, 2 CP. All 3 of those boats are up on my line. I'm going first. Here's 18 fusion in your face.
And the deep strike strat though, web weight gate, that works before they separate, doesn't it?
It does, yes. So that would be when you are determining all your reserves and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
but I does not work on them because they're not vehicles and they're not infantry or bikes. So you can't use either one of the two on them.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's they're like right they're well, they're not vehicles with fly. So the Cloud Strike one is like vehicles with fly, and then the other one I'm 99% sure it's infantry and bike units. Could be wrong. Double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's infantry and bikes. Um,
I may have cheated in a game then.
it's all good. I the first time I played them, I actually did the same thing. I was thinking that the vehicle one was for all vehicles, not vehicles with fly, and I deep strike them the first game as well. And then I was like, oh, this is sweet having D cannons coming in like that. But you can put them in strategic reserve.
Well, that makes me feel better. They did come in on the board edge,
Yeah,
so it was as if they had
I don't know.
strategically reserved themselves.
I don't know what their power. So they're four power levels. So you could strategically reserve two of them for a CP. So like that's actually better. um, so yes, you could do that as well, which is a very good
And
strategy.
you are correct. It is infantry or bikers only.
Yep, it's a gotcha.
Oops. Oh well.
That's all right. You
Live and
gotta yeah, you gotta live and learn. You gotta make the mistakes to learn how this stuff works. So yeah, man, I think that's a pretty good list. And an alternative, if you really wanted to, you could look at spears instead of the Harlequins. Like if you wanted to go full craft world. But I think that what the Harlequins bring to the table, even just the Warlord trait and the True Master, it's just really good. Um, you will find that True Master um, AdMech dogs, like the dogs that pre-deploy and everything, everybody's so afraid of them. Well, I'll tell you what, in 2 turns, my True Master killed 18 of them by herself. So it's like because I did +1 damage and then I fought twice and I was like 9-man dead. What are you gonna do about it? And then it's like, oh, I got some CP back. I could do it again. 9 more of them dead next turn. So it's really cool. And then with the True Master 2, obviously another really cool thing to do is like that turn 2, use your vehicles to hit something with the True Master, spend a CP and get back in the vehicle. Don't be afraid to do that because it's just 1 CP to bounce out of combat and end up in the vehicle. So keep that in the back of your mind. And another really good thing with the Guardians, which a lot of people forget, is like Fire and Fade is your best friend, and it's free movement. So it's like if you can run everything, like run all your psychers, run your guardians up to that middle of the board, have them be buffed up, and then if you need to get onto objectives, like you don't need to charge with your guardians or anything like that. Put it to where you can spend 1 CP and move some of them onto objectives, string them across 2 objectives across the whole mid board, and now you're threatening multiple objectives with your 3-up in bones. People always forget about Fire and Fade, and it's like it's free movement. It's 1 CP right now for craft worlds, and you, as long as you can shoot at something, just get that movement. And I use it a lot for like the middle objective. It's like if your enemy's on the middle objective and then they're like, oh, there's no way they can get here, blah blah blah, they're not going to charge with that stuff, they're not going to do this, and it's like, well, I can just shoot you and I can spend 1 CP and I can put more models on that objective and I take it from you. So it's a really good thing to keep in mind. Fire and Fade is amazing with Guardians, and it's also amazing with boats. So you can do it with the boats too. Shoot the boat first, Fire and Fade that, and now your fusion in that boat are 7 inches closer to target something that you didn't think you could reach. So you get that extra movement, which is really good. And I don't know how familiar you are with the Harlequin boat stuff, but you can point the tips of the Harlequin boats over um, like a line of guys to be able to reach a character. It's another little cheeky thing because you measure from that for the guys inside. So
Yep.
and you're not in engagement range or anything. So it's like, yeah, you can if they leave a gap for you or place their characters wrong, you can just be like, ooh, I could snipe that character. Boom, Fire and Fade, get within more inches, put that tip over those guys and be like, all right, your character's closer. See a character, I'm putting 6 fusion into you.
Nice one.
But yeah, man.
I like it.
That's all I got. So how do you feel about the list?
Well, I think my default is always like, hey, let's take all the stuff that kills everything. And I'm not saying that it works for me. That's just my default. So playing a more secondary and denial focused list is new, but I think it's definitely the better way to play. So I think I like it.
And don't underestimate it, man. This list will kill a lot of stuff. It will kill a lot of stuff. Like when something gets to the middle of the board, it's freaking dead. Like the D cannons, when they pop off, man, stuff just goes bye-bye. And then with the amount of mortal wounds you have, like nobody wants to take 20 mortal wounds in a turn. Like nobody wants to take that. So it's like D6, D3, 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 D3. It's like, dang, dude. Yeah, and especially like against like a Death Guard player, like that's their weakness now, right? It's like, oh, you have Death Shroud Terminators? Whoa, come near me, Eldrad, kill them all. Because it's like, and the other thing with that I'll say with the mortal wounds is the order you do your powers in is really important. So because Executioner does an additional D3 if you kill a model, if you are going into multi-model units, always do your smite first. Because what you're hoping for is you're hoping for that smite to be an odd number. Even if your smite only does 1 mortal wound, it's actually okay, because then Executioner is guaranteed to proc twice.
Yep.
So, yeah. 1 mortal wound on smite is better than 2 in those situations. But if you do a super smite, then you get 3 or 5 is what you're looking for. You want odd numbers on smite and then wrap it up with the Executioner.
Nice one.
Well, cool, man. I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate you going through this and everything. All right, everybody. So that is the Eldar list. I like a lot of elements about it. Let me know in the comments and everything what you think about the list, what you've tried, what's worked for you, not worked for you. Obviously, between Craftworld and maybe some Harlequins, like they're in a rough spot compared to all the new books that are coming out. So yeah, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all the fun things, and we'll see you on the next one.